Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Tech, the Good, the Bad, and the Mist, where it is in this podcast that we dive into the thriving tech space in Calgary. We discuss its positive impacts and its effects on everyday social life, on the community, on different industries, and also some of the opportunities where we could use tech to scale up the city's development and growth. I'm your host. My name is Josephine. I'm a seasoned development professional. And who is this podcast for? It's for anyone who wanted to understand what this tech scene is all about in Calgary. It is also for students who wanted to explore more opportunities in this space. I want to learn about what's happening here. And it's also for newcomers who wants to start a career in this space. With that, I'm going to introduce our first guest. This is the first episode for the series, and I'm going to introduce our first guest. But before I do, I would like to share a small story. So a couple of weeks ago, I came across a post in LinkedIn. It's a video by Toast. So in that video, the host was asking somebody that, can you name who are some of the names that come to your mind when you hear the phrase women in tech in Calgary? And after a short pause, the first name that the person mentioned was Christa Hill. And I'm so excited, so happy, and so honored to have Christa Hill as the first guest for this podcast season. Here's a little bit about her, though many of us know her. Here it is a small bio. So Christa is the co-founder of Tacit Edge, a company at the forefront of tech education and product management leadership. Along with her co-founder Rennie, Christa has developed a standardized product management curriculum for SAIT and other educational and corporate institutions. She has worked with startups to Fortune 500 companies, including Morgan Stanley and Benevity, creating groundbreaking product-based technology that has transformed the company process, practices, and profits. She's also an ICF certified business coach, renowned for her excellence. It's such a joy to have you here today, Christa. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm just honored to be guest number one in this series. And that was Phil from Tech Thursdays. Actually, I saw that video too, and my jaw hit the ground. It was such an honor to be the first person that came to mind. So, yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So since I told in the introductions, today's the whole series, the idea of the series is to discuss about what is tech like in Calgary, because we have so much buzz around the Calgary tech scene, the evolving, the emerging tech scene. Everyone's talking about opportunities as a place to grow. So many people are moving to Calgary because of tech. So, but for someone who don't understand tech, including myself, so this might be a very new concept. This might be something that's very complicated for us to understand. So the whole idea of the series is to break those complex terms into easy conversations that all of us could relate to and understand. So with that backdrop in our mind, so this is the first question that I wanted to ask you. Could you give us an overview of the tech scene in Calgary? What's generating all this buzz?
Oh, it's so layered from the smallest little startups to the larger enterprise organizations that are operating in Calgary. There's something for everyone here. And I think that really is what makes us super unique and things you might not even know about. So we have I would say that we're probably most known for financial technology like fintechs. So we've got great stories here, such as Benevity, Solium, and that soon evolved to a Morgan Stanley product. And I would say that there's way more to it than that. There is a huge emerging scene around medical technology, agricultural technology, quantum. Every industry will have technology at the heart of its operations, either for a necessity to operate as a business because they need to have a global reach, or they need to have something that enables them to grow at scale and move with society, or technology is the product, right? Is at the core of everything that they do. So because of that, every industry is booming when it comes to either adopting more technology to enable their business to grow and to thrive into the future of who we are as human beings, or it's an innovation that is happening that is really the most incredible stuff is happening in Alberta. The most incredible, most creative minds are here. And it's, like I said, it's in every industry, in every vocation. Technology will be at the heart of your job or your company within the next 5 years.
That is so promising. That very optimistic and very opportunistic, and it's a good way to open the first episode as well, because that's what we're going to talk about in the coming days. So it's set a very good backdrop for us. So the next question is we're going to get a little bit deeper into the same answer that you just asked about. So in what ways has tech impacted our city, both in the economy and in the community at large?
I think really what it's done is it is an attractor of talent from around the world. So we have a city that has dramatically changed in its population and in its size over the past 10 years. So we have, I think the stat now in Calgary is that over 40% of our population is new to Canada. So that is a significant shift, obviously, from, say, when I grew up here. And also our size. We just have so many more people than we've ever had before, which creates more demands for services and just creates a larger, more robust economy. So, with that comes the shift to also adopting greener ways of living. So, having a more diverse ecosystem of innovation. So, we are known around the world as being the place for oil and gas. And this gave us the city that a foundation of infrastructure and business and money that is very unique around the world. And because of that, more opportunities started to sprout out. More industries were becoming more attracted to this province. And that's why you see now such a diverse landscape of industries and folks coming to our province, because it's not just for oil and gas, it's for all the other industries and innovations that have really emerged from, again, our very humble beginnings in that sector. And tech was already always a big player in the city, but it just wasn't as talked about as the oil and gas sector. So we had a very solid foundation in tech just because the oil and gas sector required a lot of technology and a lot of innovation to be what it is today. And so as you can see, like this has been in our blood for a really long time. Now we're just applying these principles to other sectors. And I think really where the opportunity for folks is we are making a leap from being known as just the hub of oil and gas to being the hub of anything innovation related. So it's a unique opportunity here in the city that I'm just not seeing anywhere else. And because we have such an incredible culture of connectivity between our ecosystems, the opportunity for you to connect with a person that can give you information about an industry or a job or a role you've never heard of before is also a very unique mix of individuals and talents that you can't find anywhere else in the world. So I couldn't be more thrilled to call Calgary my home. And I grew up here and I've seen a wild change since I graduated from school a very long time ago. There wasn't any really diversity in education. We were all very much on one path and we were either going into engineering or, something a little bit more technical, or we were going into the service industry. And now you can see all of the wraparound education and topics and things that are emerging even in our education sector that really speak to what the future of Alberta is going to be like. And it is diverse. It is creative. It's full of folks that are exercising critical thinking and will be able to intermix technology with their skill sets. And then we're going to see a future that we can't even imagine.
I totally agree with you, and you have so beautifully outlined how historically and from the beginning how this the whole talent has come together. And the beauty of it is that when it attracted people from other countries and cultures and communities, there is an opportunity for people to blend together so well. There's a very encouraging and warm community that just gets together, will work together and create more positive solutions. So yeah, that's just wonderful. I think Calgary is just amazing. when we think about that. Yeah, so here I'm gonna take a little pause from here, and I wanted to see from a different perspective. So they say that with growth often come challenges. So we see that there's a lot of growth and involvement and improvement in the tech, but I would also like to understand from your perspective that is there any negative impact at all that stems from this increased focus on tech, whether it's on the community or on the environment? Is there any points to add to that?
I think the thing that I'm seeing that is a challenge is that we believe, folks that have been here a really long time, that you're one coffee date away from meeting the next person that's going to change your life, right? Either by offering you the job, no questions asked, like on a handshake, the way it used to be, or by giving you, $30 million to fund the thing that you want to take on. We have to remember that our population has dramatically shifted since we could call that how we operate. So I think the real opportunity for Calgary is to embrace the fact that almost half of that population does not have that network that we built that reputation on. So, how might we be more inclusive in our way of thinking about events, conferences, networking, that we stop leaning on that catchphrase that we're a coffee culture, because we're not, we can't be at scale. And now we are operating coffee culture at scale. So it is actually getting quite, I would say, more exclusive as to who has access to the individuals that you could in the past just find them on LinkedIn and ask them if they go for a coffee. And they would always say to you, yes, my door is always open. I hear that all the time. Or you can always just ping me on LinkedIn and I'll have a coffee with you. But the reality is that is getting more difficult at scale. So I think the real challenge is making sure that we are creating ways for people to convene in a way where they don't need to know anyone to enter. And we have new habits around including folks in the conversation that traditionally would have not necessarily been at the event or doesn't know anybody. Right. So it's one thing for us to give advice to people saying, well, you just need to network. Okay. You just go network. It's like, well, what does that even mean? Right? To someone who doesn't know anybody and who's been here for just a few months. You show up at an event, and you don't know anybody. It takes a lot to go introduce yourself to someone that you don't know. And I think for someone like me, we have to understand that if you've lived here your whole life, there's a pretty good chance when you walk into the room, you're going to know somebody. So this is not a problem that people like myself encounter. So we need to put ourselves in the shoes of folks that are walking into those rooms and don't know anyone for the first time. What would that be like for us? What would we do? And I hazard a guess that we would do what a lot of people do, which is it takes a lot of courage for us to walk up to people and get a conversation going. So I think that that concept and the advice that we give people about increase your network, go networking, let's make that more inclusive and create places where you can be seen. Like for me, I usually tell people just look for my hair, walk into a room, and if you recognize my hair, just come up to me, start talking to me, tell me what you need and why you're there and what you're about, and let me help you get to the next person that you might need to know. We do this with our students, and I do this with a lot of folks in the newcomer community that are trying to break in, because we do need to meet people to get the first job that we want. The odds of us getting it off just applying online is very difficult. That time to getting the job is shortened significantly if we get an internal referral. So, what are we doing to really help people with that problem? So, I would say that's one of the biggest challenges I would say I encounter in a very practical sense. And then I would say the second one is how we talk to founders, especially women founders who are starting companies where technology is needed as an enabler for their business, how they raise money.
Mhm.
So I sit and go to conferences where panel after panel after panel, it's talked about how money is pouring into this province, it's falling out of the sky, like, but it's not for us. It's not for women founders. We still represent less than, I think the latest stat is less than 3% of venture capital funding comes to women founders. And I think the accessibility of building products and creating innovation and starting a business where technology will be at the core is still very mysterious to a lot of folks who are not born into that or haven't worked in a company environment that is already doing that. They don't see how accessible it can be. And we make it really big. So the other opportunity really think we have as a province is breaking down that big flashy entrepreneur story, that it's about getting the Ferrari and the big buyout and that big story of empire building versus creating a business. And if you have an idea that requires innovation or technology that you think can change someone's life, including yours, that you can see small actionable steps to build that for yourself. So it's not so big and scary that it stops you from doing it. So I think that shift away from how we fund startups needs to get a little bit more grassroots, a little bit more community based, so that we can support each other at a smaller scale without needing venture capital funds necessarily to do the big play. But how might we start small and include more people in that process, and so that they can see themselves in it too as well? So yeah, to me, those are the top two things I think I talk to people almost about daily, is how might you network and try to create and go to places that are very inclusive for you to belong, and then how might you figure out your path to entrepreneurship and become a part of the innovative culture that is in this city by either starting something yourself or finding someone that you can start it with.
That is a very interesting point, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, because I myself has been in this situation so many times. But then we internally believe that this is how the system is, and you have to go through this system. But it's very empathetic of you to think that you could, as a whole, you could adjust, change the system so
Let's
that
create our own
you be
system,
brothers. Exactly.
right? Because that one was built for
Yeah,
someone and that person started it. So
yeah.
why couldn't we? Right. And I think that's it. We're missing that call to action, that that's possible and it's being modeled and it's being encouraged. So I don't know, like, how might we do that as a collective?
Yeah, and it's
Podcasts like this are a great place to start, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And you know what? It's great that you address that conception of the entrepreneurship culture, where networking, with networking, anything is possible. You could raise funds, you could do that startup, but it's very important that you pointed out the reality of it, because being working with a tech startup myself, I've seen the challenges that we see as a company. And then despite the amount of resources, there's still a lot of challenges that we come across in each and every stage. So it's very important that we say about it, we accept it, and we speak about it, so that people understand the reality of it. So now that we covered the most important aspect here, I'm sure so many people would wonder, so what is in it for me? So how do I make the step? So where do I start? Even if I don't have any tech background, can I become a part of this community or culture? Can I do something here? So what would you like to answer to those questions?
I would say to you, knowing the kind of work you like to do, what makes you happy, is a great place to start. Because in tech, there is a role that is adjacent, likely, to the thing you're doing today, but it's in the field of technology, right? So we have to remember that humans are at the core of all tech. Humans generate the problems that we need to solve, that technology we use, a combination of technology, people, and services to solve every day. So, what is the thing that you like to do that could sit in that sphere where technology could be around you as an enabler? So I think that's a really great place to start. Understanding the type of work that gets you out of bed in the morning, that you're like, yeah, that was really satisfying. I really like working cross functionally with teams. I'm really technical. I love getting in the weeds of things that are very complicated. Or I'm not technical at all, and I just love a really complex business problem to solve. Or I love doing research and I like going out and finding out more information so that we can make really great decisions. Every single one of those things that I just described has an equivalent role in it in tech. So just understanding that translation of your skills to that applicable, hireable, very valuable skill set in tech is really the place to start. So there's two places at the top of my mind that really are stand out for this. There's an educational institution here. Obviously, we have the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology that has a great set of continuing ed programs that can help you layer your education so you can see that evolving role that is
Mhm.
coming, that you can see your existing skill set, how it could run alongside, and how might you layer those things together to make the pivot. And then we also have great communities that support this conversation. One of them, I would say, is a standout, which is the City Group, the Careers in Technology and Innovation, which is an incredible meetup group that is growing like crazy. And you have so many folks in there that are newcomers, especially that have joined and come to this province because they're seeking a better life for themselves and more opportunity, and they've done it. So they've created this whole community around supporting that one activity. And within there, you can find mentors that have each of these jobs that you can talk to and sort of make your way through that. Remember that coffee culture that I told you about? They are saying yes to those coffee dates. That's the mandate of that group, right? So if you're going to be a part of that organization, you are talking to people regularly about your experience and your role and how might you have the same opportunity that they do and what can they do to help enable that for you. So I would say a membership to that organization is right out of the gates, step number one. And then to get the education and perhaps a small micro credential that you need to get yourself proven, i.e., that the employer can see that you've practiced the skill, applied programs where you can learn the theory of the activity and then apply it with a cross functional team and perhaps build a technology product so that when you take your resume, the existing one, and you smash those two things together, that means you're proven, you're tested, and you interview really well because you're walking the walk. You've got the lingo, you've got the language. And, the language I hear all the time, the terminology in tech, I don't really understand it. And it's because it's an experience and it's a practice. It's something you do, and your vocabulary expands the more people that you're around that are in that practice. And it's not complicated. I'm not a technical person by any stretch of the imagination yet. Somehow when they say woman in tech, my name came to mind, but it might surprise you to know that I have zero technical background or experience, but I have an unlimited level of curiosity about solving problems for people using a combination of technology, services, and people. And that's how I made my way through this industry. So that's really what it is. You got to start with what is the thing that's interesting to you? How might you find a community of folks where you could go discover how you can discover your path to the name of the pathway that you want to get into? And then how might you find a small course, a part time one to just get some experience in it and then just try, get to the try. And I think really, if I was to like break it down as to, especially in this city, that's the fastest path to realizing your dreams is just go to where people are doing it.
That's just awesome. It's like you've given out a whole formula. I feel like it's an exclusive information.
You know what? But it's because it wasn't obvious. And so, a whole lot of us in this community are taking on different prongs of that problem. For me in product management, the question was, how do I become a product manager? This was not clear. It was a very exclusive job. So we demystified that by partnering with SAID and creating that avenue. That boot camp spun up other boot camps where people were like, how do I become a UX designer? How do I become like, again, how do I become? How do I become? How do I become? Right. And then great folks like Zach, who started City, and their website, by the way, is careerintech.ca. The problem they wanted to solve is how might we support the process of finding a job? Because let's face it, that can be really up and down. So, how might we create a community of like minded individuals where you can go in and again, not be turned away by that coffee culture and instead be welcomed into it? And how might you find people just like you, right? Who also have your story so you don't feel alone. And I think when you think about how big it can be to try and pivot into this industry, because it seems really big, right? Go to where people have broken it down and making that problem smaller to take on one at a time. And I think that's really what we have here, which is just incredible. And all of it's fairly new. So if you're like, oh, how come I didn't know about this before? It's not because it's been around forever, right? City has only been around for a couple of years, right? And so again, all of these is because we've been listening to the needs of our students and the people that really, really we care about. And those problems have created solutions that we're just really getting out there at scale now.
This is like a key to a entirely new door to open opportunities. Thank you for mentioning all the points so clearly. We would also, when we share the podcast, we'll also share those details on those resources. So I'm sure so many people who wanted to navigate through the space, wanted to find a door to explore the space, will find this immensely helpful. And I'm so grateful that you mentioned about it and you shared it to all of us. So thank you so much, Krista, on that. So we are at the end of the podcast, so we are wrapping up, and I have one last question to ask you. So we've discussed about the good about the technology. We've discussed about what the negative impacts, if any, the challenges, and the third thing is the mist. So, do you think that though the technology is thriving here, are we missing any aspect of technology that we could look upon or use to improve our city, our social and economic development?
Oh, that's a really big question. I think that we're really embracing tech to help solve problems here. We have a province, and even even from a government perspective, I see the appetite for this thinking to start to really make its way into public service. I I would say to you that there's nothing that we're missing. I think it's just something that's going to take time. And it's not going to be a quick fix. So we have a lot of cultural ticks around how we operate in our businesses because of legacy industries that we've created that is very hard to let go of the way things have always been done in favor of working in ambiguity like we do in tech. Right. So, over planning something and doing a ton of budgeting and a ton of research is actually a barrier to innovation. In innovation, you want people to be freely and creatively thinking, exchanging ideas, trying things out, having them fail, let the team know the failure and what that learning was. And that is also highly valuable. So, how might we now try a different thing? So, I think really the one thing I would say around how we can stay innovative in this province is just always remember that innovation comes when we're uncomfortable. Innovation comes when we are not certain about the outcome, right? And innovation thrives in environments to which we can embrace that ambiguity, and the speed to which we can share our learnings amongst each other is going to be the key to our success in the future. And that's called agile, right? And so when people think about applying technology to improve our lives, I would say we should just peel that back to let's have that mindset be a shift for all of us, and the technology will come. So if we can have the mindset that we're okay when things are not 100% certain in our paths or in our lives, knowing that we can find out what the next right step might be when we do something to get us more information, right? Those will be the habits that will bring technology faster to solve problems instead of us having to be so certain about everything before we try something. So I think that's really how I would answer that question. It's not what technology is missing, but what mindset that we need to be in order for technology to come. And I believe that is very much that entrepreneurial mindset, that curiosity, the critical thinking, all of the skills that AI does not possess, right?
Yeah.
That's humans. We need humans to stay curious and moving fast towards iteratively learning and sharing. And as long as we have that, then technology will move faster and we can solve our problems faster. But AI won't be able to solve that for us, but it will enable us in other ways. But I think that's the one thing that I would want to leave this podcast on, is that at the end of the day, we still need humans to be at the heart of that process of innovation and growth. And then the technology will bloom from that mindset that we all have.
That's a great closing answer. I can't agree more on the human factor about it, especially with the so much debate going on around everywhere over AI and human intelligence.
Yeah, and you haven't missed the
Good
boat, right?
reminder.
If there's anyone listening right now that is like, "Oh, it's gone too far. It's too big. I couldn't possibly get in now." It's not too late. It's never going to be too late, especially in this province. We need more people. We need more minds. Need more diversity, more thinking, more education, more of everything that you have to offer. So please, please, please don't think that it's not for you because you're too late in your career or you made a decision and you think you can't walk it back and go sideways into tech. You absolutely can. And people like me can help you figure that out. So don't think it's too late because it's for everyone.
That's so heartwarming. It's such a wonderful thing to say. Thank you so much, Krista. I'd like to close with a fun question. So we spoke about so much big things. So uh, beyond everything, we are humans. At the end of the day, we break down, we crash when we meet with so many things. So when you come across a situation like this, what's your mood savers? Like what brings up the spirit in you? What makes you feel energetic or happy once again when you're feeling so down and kind of distressed?
I think, that only happens for me if I lose hope that I can't solve a problem. And remember that mindset that I was saying that, like, I really hope sort of propagates more in Alberta, which is like we embrace that moment and then we say to ourselves, what's the thing, the biggest barrier to me moving forward? What is the most important thing for me to learn right now so that I might take the next step? What is that thing? And you just have to ask yourself that. And I'm a very, very, very lucky individual. Renee and I have created a company that the underpinnings of it when we started it was we will live in joy, we will live in empowerment, and we are building a lifestyle, not an empire. So I jump out of bed every morning with joy because we choose work that makes us incredibly happy. And there's not a product problem on the planet that doesn't get me excited. I'm a very excitable person. So if you see me down, it's very rare. But usually in those moments, that's the one thing that I remember is that I'm missing something. I'm missing a piece of information, and that's why I'm uncomfortable and that I just can't find my path forward. So, what is the thing that I can do, the next right step I can take to keep moving forward instead of staying still in this? So, I think, when you're down and you're having a hard time, obviously being in that moment and really, embracing that for yourself and discovering all the things that might be showing up in that moment are really important. And then when you're ready, it's okay to ask yourself, what is the next piece of information I need to learn so that I can make a move? What is that? It's always something, right? So hold that for yourself and hold space for it in your life. Because if you can sit in that and really out what that big thing is that's standing in the way and how might you break that down into smaller things. So again, you're not stopping yourself from taking that big leap forward. So if it feels too big, how do I make it smaller? And how do I do one thing today, this afternoon, to help me move through it? What is that thing? And I think from a coaching mindset and even from an innovation mindset, these are the exact same strategies that we use. Product management runs my life. And there's a reason. And it's because, again, in the feeling of bigness, you can get down to a small actionable thing if you just don't live in the bigness of it.
I'm gonna actually take that as my biggest takeaway from this session. I'm gonna add it to my journal. I'm gonna write it down. It's so helpful. So thank you so much, Krista. We have wrapped up the first podcast episode on the tech, the good, bad, and the mist. I'm so elated and honored and happy that you became our first guest for this episode, and we had so many pieces of information that could make such a huge impact in so many lives. I'm very happy that we got to do it once again. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully we get to talk again in the future. I'm really excited for you in the path of this.
Thank you, Krista.